Me tonight. It's good to see so many people. It looks like 34 participants. That's a very good turnout, especially in these difficult times. Before we get into the judging, I will just mention my my style and what I'm looking for. And there's a few things I'll just mention. But we are starting with the mono first. And to save me keep repeating myself, because we have got a lot of images, some images I think have been put into the mono section because some people needed images for the mono section, rather than because they are really ideally suited to be mono images. So I'm not going to completely harp on it. One of the things that really bugs me about judges is when they keep using the same old things over and over and over again and are not original. So I'm not going to keep repeating myself, but occasionally, if I spot one that really does stand out as being one that probably has been put in because it's a gap filler almost, and would probably have worked better as a color image, I will mention it. But we'll get into it. One thing that I'm looking for, and I will say this just at the outset, then I don't have to keep saying it again all over the time, is that what I want from images is they need to be memorable. They need to stick out in my mind and be slightly different from everything else around them. I'm not going to compare them to other competitions that I'm seeing, but within this competition tonight, they have to stick out. And people need to think, are the images that they put into competitions real competition photographs, or are they just images that they like? And there is a big difference. If you've seen my YouTube channel, my catchphrase is enjoy your photography. And I think that's really important, because I don't even participate in competitions anymore. I've been there and done that. And I find sometimes it can be a bit demoralizing when you put in what you think's your best work and a judge just rips it apart or doesn't get it. And I don't try and do that as a judge, but you do have to bear in mind that a judge is going to be looking for certain things and does have to rank the images against everything else on the night. And so just bear that in mind, and I'll try and point that out as I go through. There'll be some that I hold, and there'll be some that I'll just comment on and mark and move on. Now, when I marked these originally, I did do the color section first, and I went through them as if I was judging them on the night and held what I thought would need to be held, and then went back afterwards. And I found that I'd bunched them up slightly too far, so I had to move down all of the images to us. All of them got a lower mark so I could make more room at the top. So that's the mark scheme that I've used. So the lowest mark that's going to be given tonight is a 13. I was told that I could use a full range, but when I've come across judges that have given single figures, it tends to draw sharp intakes of breath. But that's the reason why that I've given those marks tonight. So we'll start off with this one. It's an interesting shot, and I think it's good that you've seen the leaf in the dark spot of the water, which really makes it stand out. So that's well seen and caught very well. So the leaf itself is nice and sharp. What I'm not so keen on about this is the amount of dead space around it. I'm not a big fan of cropping images for other people, but what I would say is ask yourself, what is the space around the subject actually doing to enhance the image? And to me, I think we could have lost quite a bit of the area around this leaf and probably given it a little bit more impact. So we're going to start off with a, with a 15.
KTL Webby.
Okay, and so again, lovely patterns in this shot. Quite a decent mono conversion. There's some good whites and some good blacks without losing the whites, which is something that I'm going to come back to in a few images Some of the mono conversions tonight are not as strong as others. And so I will come back to that when I see one. But this one is a good mono conversion, some good blacks and some good whites. It is strong from that point of view, but from a point of view of a competition image, what I'm doing is I'm looking for some kind of focus. And whereas it's interesting for texture and pattern, I don't quite have an area that I can focus on. My eye moves around and there's a very dominant dark tree, very thick branch on the left that kind of draws your eye, and it's just, for me, a little bit messy and there's a lot of things going on. I know that's what it is, but as a competition shot, I would like at least one area for my eye to land on. And the pattern shot is not quite as pictorial as some of the other things that are coming later. So that's a 15 as well.
John Kent.
Right, some things to really like about this image. I think the two figures down at the bottom really do make the image. Without those, this image wouldn't be anywhere near as strong. And I think this is a kind of image of two halves. We've got areas. Let's see if I can. Yeah, I was just trying to get my drawing tools up. There we go. So we've got areas here, down here, that are very dark. And then we've got this fence down there that kind of, because it's got those white slats between it, kind of draws your eye to it. And the main interest for me is here in the center, and a different crop would have really strengthened that image, because we don't need the fence on the right side or the dark area on the left hand side that just detracts from the good bits in the middle. So I think that could have been made so much stronger with a better crop. So that's going to be a 15 as well.
J. Prakash. Two.
Right. Now, this was a very, very, very nearly held image. I do like this a lot. Little to fault with it, but when I looked at all the other images and considered what were the strongest, this just slightly missed out. But there's not a lot that I can fault about this. I like the stance of the animal. We've got a fairly nondescript background, which is good. It makes that stand out, and the mono conversion's good as well. And so I can't really fault it, but again, what we've got to do is we've got to consider this in context of the competition, and there are others that I just think are a little bit stronger. So that gets a 17 and just miss out of being held.
Ruth Lockery.
So any 17s tonight, just to clarify, are the ones that nearly made the held. Any that are held will get at least 18 or higher. So nature reclaims. We've got, again, similar to what I mentioned in a previous image, a lot going on. And it's difficult to find somewhere for your eye to land on. Yes, we do have this white part of the window just that's poking through the ivy, but then we've also got in the top left hand corner a very bright area of sky, and whenever you've got a brighter area, your eye gets drawn towards it. So we've got bright up here and we've got bright here there, so those two areas are competing to pull your eye away from what is supposed to be the focus, I think, which is the ivy, but because there's so much of it, there's just a bit too much going on and not enough area to just your eye to settle on. If there was gone in very tight and maybe focused on one leaf, maybe that would have helped. But that's going to be a 15 as well.
Carol Weatherly.
Okay. Right, I said I would mention them when they came up. Now, for me, this is an image that is crying out to be in colour. We all know that daffodils are yellow, and this just says to me it perhaps was an image that was chosen to be just a mono because he needed something to be mono. But then when we look at it in a little bit more detail, they're not the most attractively placed flower heads from a pictorial standpoint either. Now, this may be what you saw on the day, and this may be your mantra to take pictures of what you see, which is absolutely fine, and it's a valid way of taking photographs. But if you're then going to choose to put a photograph into a competition, then you need to think a little bit more about composition. And there are the flower, this main flower here is very strong, and it's a nice shape, but then we've got other flowers behind and overlapping that are not quite as pleasing. And so if you're doing this kind of thing, you can move things. All right, I've done this before. Now, you don't have to destroy the flowers. You could just gently move them to one side with a hand to take the picture of the flower that looks best. I've done this before where I've pulled tree branches out of the way and just tuck them over another and then put them back after I've finished, just to make the shot better, to make the composition cleaner. And so I think this just suffers from that. So that's going to be a 15 as well.
John Metcalf.
Great capture. It's not always easy to catch birds in flight, but it's nice and sharp. The mono conversion's quite as good. There's good blacks and good whites within there. There are, again, others that I like a little bit more, so I'm going to give that one a 16.
Carol Weatherly.
Where are we up to? I'm just keeping an eye on the time because I do waffle on quite a bit. Right, leaf veins. Again, I like this. Simple, and quite often simple is better because there's less to distract the viewer. You then can focus on a particular area, and this has been done well from a composition point of view. There are whites in there, and there are blacks. But overall, I think the overall tone is a little bit mid-tony. I think that's probably because of the background. And so it does feel just ever so slightly flat. It's a good attempt and it's well seen. The main drop in the middle is nicely sharp. It's going to get a 16 from me tonight.
Mandy Borman.
Picture of two halves, again, really. Yes, I could say in a similar way to the daffodils that this is going to have colour in it, but for some, this doesn't seem quite as glaring as the daffodils did. I can cope with the flower head here being in mono, because there's a good range of tones and good textures there. So that is really good. But you've got to ask yourself, is every part of this shot adding to the picture? And the flower head is great. Now, anything below the red line, is that adding to the picture? And for me, I don't think it is. I think the strength of this image is in the flower head, and the square crop would have made the whole thing much bigger on the screen. The empty spots and the leaves and the stems are not as interesting as the flower head itself. So this image could have had so much more impact with a slightly bolder crop. And half of that, the image is taken up by that bottom half that's not really doing a lot to add to the image. So for the strength of the top half, it will get a 16, but it could have probably gotten a 17 with a just bit more impact.
Carolyn Phillips.
Right, the author here has done really well with the whites. I think it looked a little bit better on my computer. The back of the neck does seem to be going slightly, but I'm going to let that off because it looked better on my computer. It might be Zoom playing tricks. But I think the whites were really good. They were very well handled. It's just a shame for me about the crop again. It's been put into a portrait crop. And by doing that, we've got room at the top and I would have sooner had that room that's at the top of the image to be in front of the bird, because it just feels a little bit tight on the front and the back of the bird. Now, that could have been a choice that you had to make. There might have been something ugly on the left-hand side of the bird, but it's very tight under the left foot of the bird as well, but we've got loads of room at the top. So just a slight repositioning and composition would have helped almost give the bird a little bit more room to breathe. Just from a compositional point of view, it feels very tight at the bottom of the frame. So I like the quality, so it's going to get a 17. So that could have probably been held with a slightly more favourable crop.
Anissa Sadat.
Right, and I'm going to stop myself from keeping going on about cropping, because I did say that I don't like people who talk about the same thing all the time. But you get the idea about my what I'm looking for in a crop. Again, this was one of those that was, I think it ended up in the held section, and when I looked at all of the held images that I'd got, it just slightly slid out because of the strength of the images that it was up against. It's a very good mono conversion. We've got really nice texture in the animal. The author has managed to get it pretty much sharp from front to back. Yeah, over that kind of distance, you would expect it just to be going out slightly by the tail. But you've done a really good job there of keeping it in. There's nothing greatly distracting in the background. And so that's a really strong image of this animal. It was just, when I looked at what it was up against, it just slightly slid out of those held places, but it's going to get a 17.
Dan Johnson.
This one's going to be held. So any that I hold, I'll comment on at the end. Okay. Well seen. Now, this is where judges are allowed to contradict themselves. I've mentioned that there's, in a previous image, that there's no area of focus. And with this one, because we've gone in very tight, we could say that there is an interesting water droplet just there that is almost on a third to focus on. So there is a little bit of variation, but it's interesting. It becomes abstract, and it's because it's gone in so tightly, rather than being wide and busy. This is narrow and almost uniform abstraction. And so I actually prefer this to previous comments I've made about things not having an area focus. A nice mono conversion, well seen, something a little bit different. It's going to get a 16.
Lucy Wilson.
Okay, our ring-tailed lemur. Just finding him on my... Okay. The animal itself has been caught well. I like the pose. Nice mono conversion in places. So there's some good strong whites, but there's a few things that have gone on here that just draw my attention slightly. So we've got the animal's right shoulder. I don't know whether it's just been pushed a little bit too hard, or it's blown, or it's got a bit of a strange colour. And then the top of the animal's head looks a little bit fuzzy, as if the author maybe has blurred the background a little bit and just overlapped the head of the animals slightly. And then I know it's where it was, and there's not a lot the author could have done about it. But if it was just the animal on this this branch here, that branch there is a really nice shape, but all of the tangled mess behind it is just not as pleasing to the eye. That single branch on its own would have been very attractive. So from a point of view of a competition shot, there's quite a few things that just let it down. Yes, that's what you saw on the day, but that doesn't necessarily make the strongest competition shot. So that's going to be a 15.
Colin Yates.
And we're going to hold the blackbird, thank you. Okay. At first glance, I really like this shot, and particularly when you look at what I would call the main seal, which I'm going to call this guy here, because the reason why your eye goes to that is because it's been branded or marked in some way with a number, and your eye goes straight to that. And if you look at the rock around it, it's got that white underneath it, so it really makes that seal separate from the background, which is great. And so you start to wonder, well, if that's the main focus, what are all the other seals adding to that? Now, if you're taking this maybe from a boat, and this was as close as you could get, maybe because of the zoom. But that would have been a stronger picture of that seal on its own. And when you do actually go and look at that in a bit of detail, unfortunately, the head of that seal is slightly soft, which is just a shame, because there's a lot in that image that's not actually as powerful as that one seal. Now, obviously, technical issues may have been just not got a long enough zoom to get in any closer, which is a shame because there was a better photograph in there. So I was going to get a 15.
Jan Kent.
This is one of those very nearly made it to the held positions. Simple, but enough there to keep your eye interested. Very interesting shaped tree. Obviously, it's not in the winter because it's got no leaves, but that just accentuates the shape of this tree. It stands out really well because of the snow on the ground behind it, and really the tracks that have been made on the snow don't bother me either. We've even got a few look like deer up on the hill either as well, just as a little bit of a bonus. So I really like this one. Just didn't quite make it again because of others that I like more. So that's going to get a 17.
Brad Cheek.
This is one of those shots that photographers seem to take when you see it. It is artistic, and I can see the artistic quality of it. It's in a magazine with a subtitle underneath it, or as a cover to a book cover. Yes, maybe that would be really powerful, but just as a standalone image, it's not really telling me a lot. It's well taken. It's grungy, maybe a little bit too dark. It's quite a heavy vignette. But against what else we've got tonight, it's not quite as strong. So that's going to get a 15 as well.
Brad Cheek.
Now, this one is so nearly could have been so much better. There's a few things about this one. I know I've mentioned it before, but the mono conversion on this is very mid-tony, and with a little bit more selective use of the conversion process, you could have really made those snail shells pop out. If you put this into Photoshop and look at the levels, there's virtually nothing on the right-hand side. If you bring that in, it makes the whole thing pop loads more. And you don't have to do it over the whole image. You can selectively do it in the areas that you want to draw attention to. And when you say draw attention to, when you've got a very grey image and then you choose to put a very, very thick white key line around the edge, that pulls the eye away from what you're trying to focus on. Now, it won't be the last time I mentioned double borders. It seems to be there's a few people that are quite fan of double keyline borders. I don't personally see the what that adds to the image. Let the image speak for it. We don't need double borders for me. And if you do want a white key line, yeah, good, but make it thinner. That's going to get a 14. Right, very nicely framed. Looking around, the whites are held very well, so that's good. On a white bird with dark spots, dark patches rather, that's difficult to do, and so the author's done well with that. Unfortunately, it's just around the head area, it's just on the soft side, so it just misfocus ever so slightly there. Nice composition though, and cropping with that, nothing else really, but it's going to get a 15.
Steve Weatherly.
Okay, let's hold the wasp. Right. Okay, all right, so where have we got to? Sparrow. Okay. I can see why the author's done this. They've gone in tight to try and pick out the detail. Unfortunately, though, I don't know whether you've cropped in really tightly on a lot bigger image, but this is started to break down, and maybe you've tried to compensate, and it's ended up becoming over sharpened, which is just a shame. I admire what you've tried to do to try and pick out the detail, because if you can get a really detailed headshot, they're very, very striking, because it's not the kind of angle that you normally see these birds at. But then the background as well has these white streaks in, so that's not totally complementary. So it's really the quality that's just slightly let this image down. So that's just a shame, because it's a bold choice and it's a good idea. So just try again and either try and get a longer lens or a bit closer, but the quality's not quite there. So that's a 14. Sorry, what number was this? I've lost my sparrow headshot. No, I found myself again. I've lost my place on my list. Right, silver birch. This was a very near to being held. This one just feel, because there's only the one main tree trunk as compared to a previous image that I talked about, this doesn't feel quite as messy. And I really do like the backlighting, the way that lights up the trees, but you've managed to get enough light on this side of the tree to make it quite striking. So that's a good shot. That's going to get a 17.
Ken McGrath.
Oh, and this has got so much going for it. It was again a very, very near. Sorry, I've just kicked my mouse onto the floor, and that's what was it? There we go. Very, very nearly to be held, because I love the composition and I love the way that the rabbit has been or hare has been caught, but it's just the body of the rabbit could just, or that I keep saying rabbit, hare could have just been made more of, brought out some of the whites and the textures just by a little bit of selective use of the conversion, however you've done it. Again, doesn't need to be done over the whole image, but just to make that rabbit pop a little bit more. It's just ever so slightly flat for me, but it's a lovely image. Nearly made it into the top selection of images, so it's going to get a 17.
Christine Armstrong.
Another one that nearly made it. Great detail, very, very sharp here. When you think of this one, you can see all of the detail in the feathers around the body and then around the eye, really sharp. So whether it's got up close or whether you've got a long lens, however you've done this is great technique, and very sharp, really nice angle that you've got here with a little bit of foliage just down at the base. Lost out because there's some stronger ones that it's against tonight, but it's a very nice shot there. So that is a 17.
Daniel Stott.
Right. Again, this is one of those kind of things that we go out and we take because the conditions are just right. And leading lines always work well. You can see there's a bit of snow coming down as well. You can tell that just from the path. There's some streaks of snow there. So you've not just gone out when the snow had stopped. You're out in the inclement weather, which is great. But one thing about a leading line, if you follow that leading line and the path is a natural leading line, when you get to the end of it, there needs to be something there for your eye to get to, for me. So whether you'd... even if there's nobody about, one of the things that you can do is stick the camera on a tripod, stick the self-timer on, run down the path and take a self-portrait of you walking down the path. But at least there's a something to focus on. If there's a leading line, your eye naturally wants to go there. So this could have been so much stronger with just a figure, just halfway down. Now you may disagree, but that's my point of view. It's going to get a 16.
Anissa Sadat.
Okay, black-headed gull. There's lots of good things about this. I do like the way that you've caught this. It's not easy to catch birds in flight. Birds in flight are notoriously tricky. And the head here is really sharp, so that's great. And it's looking down either at its chicks or at to get some prey or whatever it's doing. You can see that there's a bit of a story here. Unfortunately, when you look at the wings, though, from my point of view, as well as looking at how well the bird's been taken, I am also looking for the pictorial quality as well. This is not just an out-and-out straight nature competition. And so there is a pictorial element as well. Even in a normal nature competition, there is still pictorial elements there. And so the front wing is not at the most pleasing angle, and the wing, it's the bird's left wing is going out of focus. Obviously, perhaps you couldn't get the shutter speed high enough or whatever. And so that is just a shame, because the central part of the bird is really nice. So I think that's a 16.
Kirsty Railton.
Right, okay. So again, the bird itself is really well taken. We've got some good detail there in all the plumage. Maybe the darker parts are, for me, just ever so slightly too dark. Maybe just a little bit of lifting of the shadows may have brought out a little bit more detail in those areas. But then the composition, for me, is just ever so slightly jarring. If the bird had been facing the other way and looking into the frame, that would have just felt far more natural. At the moment, he's at the top left-hand corner, looking out of the top left-hand corner. And so we've got all of the space on the right-hand side that's dead. If the bird had spun around, that would have made more sense of that. So that composition element just irks me slightly. And we've not only got a double key line, but we've got a shadow as well on this one, which again, when you've got such a strong white key line, and it's the most white part of the image, it just pulls your eye out of the frame. And so for me, and I'm sure other judges would mention similar things, we'll just mention judge bait while I'm just talking about this. Judge bait is something that judges will look for whenever a judge scans an image. They look for things to say, oh, look at that, and that is clear judge bait, putting too thick a key line, and it's dead easy to remedy. Just don't do it. So that's a 16 as well.
Tina Cordukes.
Okay, we're going to hold that one. How are we doing for time? Oh, we're okay. Right, I probably don't need to say a lot about this because you probably by now can almost guess what I'm going to say. But the detailing on the leaves is good. We've got some strong mono conversion. But again, it's one of those where what is the focus of this image? Yes, there's some leaves and there's a bit of a either wall or pot or some kind of stonework underneath. But we can't really say it's a strong texture shot because the texture hasn't been brought out really to its fullest. And there's no area of focus in the leaves. So we've got a split almost diagonally down the image. And so for me, I would like just at least something that stood out, even if you'd spotted one different coloured leaf amongst a load, one white leaf amongst a load of darker leaves, it would have drawn the eye and just been more pictorially pleasing. So the ivy, what did I say, 14. Right, so this one, there's a lot to like, but then the more you start to look at it, the more that there just are things that could have been done better. And these kind of shots, I know they are, you can't ask the birds to go back and do it again, so you have to take what you get. And you've got this starling on the right in flight, just coming into this nest by the looks of it, which is nice. But if we look at that starling first, we've got I think it's its right foot that's out of focus because it's moving and its wings are out of focus. The body of the bird on the left is very dark. The nest box thing is quite dominant in the frame. And so whereas it's a nice moment that's been caught, and I'm sure the author was proud of it, from a shot that would really stand up against others in this category. It's just there's things that just don't work as well together from a technical point of view, and just to make it look really strong. So that's going to get a 16.
Graham Harvey.
I'm going to hold this one. And we're going to hold that one. Okay, so here the author has found a pleasant scene, and as the title actually suggests, it does seem very tranquil. The composition has been considered. I like the way that we start off either on a bridge or in the river, on a lake or on the bank, however it's done, but you're over the water, so your eye goes through over the water down over this lake, which is nice. Unfortunately, I don't know whether it's either a mono conversion that's been pushed really hard, or whether it was an infrared that again has gone a little bit too far. But some of the whites, especially in this area just here, just seem to have gone too far. They're just a little bit too dominant. And then we've also got this area of bank down here. Now, I don't know whether it's snow or whether it's grass that's been infrared treated or whatever it is, but that is a very strange colour, and it just draws your eye to it as well because of it. The whole thing just feels like the conversion has just let the scene down, and again, it could have been better in colour, but for me, it's just been overcooked. Just a bit too pushed too far, and so that's going to get a 15.
Steve Weatherly.
Sparrows. Again, the sparrows themselves are fairly nice. I do like the perch that they're on. That's an interesting perch, but again, from a pictorial point of view, the background is very, very busy, and it really competes with the perch itself. This feathery, whatever it is that they're on, is very good. I like that, but the strands of grass and whatever in the background really do compete because they are so bright and strong, and almost the background is stronger than the birds themselves. It's the bird should be the star of the image and not the background or the perch, and unfortunately, so the balance there just isn't quite what it needs to be. That's a 15.
Lucy Wilson.
Okay. Pleasant shot of this squirrel. I don't mind shots of squirrels. Some people will really say, "Oh, grey squirrels, pests, vermin, all that kind of thing." Well, I think they're quite cute. I quite like a squirrel. So he's not going to get marked down because of that. But a few things that the author here could have just done a bit better. Again, I keep coming back to these mono conversions. This is really, I asked for the monos to be done first because I wanted to get this out of the way, and because I think the colours are, there's lots of strong colour sets, but in the mono, I think there's quite a few that could just benefit from being converted better, just to pull out a bit more texture. In particular, there's another shot coming up in a few images where you can see the difference, but the back part of it and the shoulder here of the squirrel, there is more detail there that could have easily been brought out with just a little bit more selective tweaking it in whatever you've used to convert to mono, and it would have just given more texture and more punch to this image. And then we've also got this very, very white streak there in the background that just pulls your eye away again from the main subject. As soon as you've got a bright area in an image, it's going to pull the author's eye away from where you want the author to be, the viewer to be looking. And so this one is, I've lost my place. It's 15.
Katie Alwabi.
I do like this a lot. This was one of those, very nearly made it into the top held section. Strong. I like the close-up quality of this, right in your face. Good detail there. A really nice, strong image. Just again tonight, there was others that just pipped it to the post. So he's a 17.
Christine Armstrong.
All right, okay. Again, I'm not going to talk about dead space at the bottom because I've already mentioned that. But when we look at the actual main part that is the star of the show as such, it's just losing quality. It's not really sharp enough. I can't see those individual ice crystals that I'd really want to see. It's just not, for me, quite sharp enough. So that's going to get a 13. Hold. And this is the one I was talking about seeing the texture compared with the other one. He's going to be hold as well, held. Right. Do like this for its simplicity. It's well seen. I do like the angle that the branch comes into the frame from the top corner, and you've got these buds on the branch, which are interesting, some good texture. Just a shame that just a few of the highlights are just starting to go in various places, just either gone or just on the very edge of going, which is just a shame, because it just half a stop less and that would have got rid of that, which is just a shame, or a bit of different converting or use of levels or whatever would have just sorted that out. So good composition, good idea, just lost on a little bit of quality. He's a 16.
Graham Harvey.
Again, I can see why the author took this. We've got this kind of leading line. But this one overall is very, very grey in tone. It's very mid-tony. There was more detail here to be pulled out. Now, the author may have thought, well, I've got some bright highlights over here through the trees, which look like they may have been brought down slightly. But again, when you're pushing, you can push certain areas to bring out areas to make them brighter rather than doing it globally across the whole image. And there was more to be gained from this image. By bringing out some stronger whites in areas where you wanted to draw the viewer's focus. So it's going to get a 14. Okay, the bird itself, I like the way that you can only see the head and it's poking up above the grass. I don't dislike that at all. That's quite intriguing. I definitely can't say that there's no whites in this image, and so that's good from that point of view. But again, you probably know what's coming next. When you look into the background of the image, you've got to think, how is that adding to the image? And we've got all of these either flowers or specular highlights, whatever they are, that kind of almost put it on a star field. Now, that might have been what attracted you to this particular shot. You might have thought, oh, that might, you might think, wow, that is really makes this shot. For me, it just becomes a bit of a distraction, which is unfortunate. And so the heron's going to get a 15.
Daniel Stott.
Right, okay. 18. This is a held. Gathering. Just keeping an eye on the time. There's a lot to like about this shot, and this was one of those that nearly made it. Some judges might say there's a lot of dark areas around the edges. For me, that doesn't worry me. The key line here is much more subtle rather than as thick, which is okay. The only thing that's just stopped this getting into the held section is the animal itself just could have been a little bit more defined, and by that I mean it's hid behind the stamen parts of the flower, and without the fact you can see the wings popping out among the top, at first glance you might even miss the fact that there is some kind of insect there. So just seeing a little bit more definition of the animal would have just taken that up an extra few notches. So it's obviously you get what you get on the day, but it's nicely handled. So it's a 17 and nearly there.
Peter Kay.
Right. Again, I can understand why you've taken this. Probably, I would imagine this is a fairly small snail based on the head of that flower. So well seen. But unfortunately, as I've mentioned in other images, one of the first things that, well, I look for definitely, but I think most judges will, is the technical qualities. And the first technical quality that you're going to look for is it sharp? And unfortunately, this doesn't quite make it. It's the snail itself, where it needs to be sharp, or this image needs to be sharp, just isn't. It's very soft. and it lets the image down. So whether it was to do with the fact that you've not got a macro lens, or you just missed on your focus. So it's just a shame for this, because it got potential, but it's a 13. We're going to hold this one. Right, there's a bit of a run now at the end. We're going to hold this one. We're going to hold this one. And we're going to hold that one. And that should be all of them. Okay. How do we do this? Do I just put them on a light box, or can I tell you certain ones to do them in reverse order? Is that? I can't hear you, you're on mute.
I think if you read the number out of the ones you want to see in the order that you want to see them.
Okay, cool. Right, no problem. So I'll do the 18s first of all. It looks like we've gone back. Okay, right, we've gone back to the beginning. So I'll go down my list and I'll do the 18s. So we put number 15 up, the blackbird. Okay, this one's going to get an 18. Really like this one. Simple perch. Unobtrusive background, great detail in the feathers, even got some, I don't know whether it's dust, pollen, or bits of water splash on the tail. Super detail, really nice composition. That's going to get an 18. Number 21, please, the wasp head.
Gary Barton.
21. Okay, this is another 18. We've got great detail there in the eye. I would imagine this is either some kind of focus stack or something of the like, or just some great focusing there on the eye to get there. And the effect that's been applied, some kind of solarization or something to just or inversion, whatever's been done, I don't know if there's something going on, but that adds to a bit of drama for this image. The fact it's so big and close up just adds more impact. So well done for that one. That's an 18.
Mike Atkinson.
We're going to go next to number 40, the Grey Squirrel. Right, did mention a previous Grey Squirrel that didn't have quite as much texture and detail in the fur, and you definitely can't accuse this one of doing this. When I've mentioned tonight about strong mono conversions, this is an example of a good one. We've got really good texture, really strong whites, really good blacks, and it almost makes it 3D in quality. Even though it's a 2D image, you can see the form of this, and the fact you've got it in profile stops any issues with depth of field. A really good background behind it, so that's a really nice image. That's an 18.
Mike Atkinson.
We'll go for number 44. Okay, light dusting. Subtle image. Nice sky. Some different layers going on. So you've got a darker hill or promontory in the foreground, a grey one in the midground, then the hill with the snow on in the background, which is good. The only thing that perhaps that would have just lifted this into a top spot is just some area just to land on, maybe a bit of light somewhere, or just something in the foreground. There's the whole image is very nice and tranquil, but I just want something just to lift it up to that next level. But it's a lovely image. It's an 18.
Andy Foreman.
Number 48, Resurrection. Great idea. Triptych. And yeah, here we've got the barbed wire. I don't know whether I'm sure it's perhaps not the same person as we used the barbed wire around the fence in a previous image, but the lighting here is really nice. It's got a message. I have no idea what the message is, but I'm sure it has got a message. But it's been really, really well thought out. The two outside pictures balance the picture in the middle. It's a strong mono conversion, and it's a memorable image, so it's an 18.
Reg Haslam.
Number 50, please, hovering. Great detail here in the fly, the hoverfly, I assume it is. I'm not very good with insects, whatever kind of insect it is. The eye is really sharp. It's framed behind, in front of a whiter background, which is good. That makes that stand out. And it's a nice capture. I like that. And so that's got an 18 as well.
Kirsty Belton.
2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Have I got how many? Oh,
6 left, I think.
Okay, well, I was just checking I hadn't missed any. Right, okay, so I've got 12, the gardener. Right. Oh, this is a lovely image. I love the way that this has been silhouetted. You've got the backlight. Yeah, the main character has got no detail, but that doesn't matter to me at all. We know all we need to know, because I think the silhouette here really works well. We know what she's doing. It's got lovely atmosphere, done well seen and well composed. Super shot, 19.
Dan Johnson.
We'll have number 32, Hair on Alert. Right. Again, great mono conversion. Really, the fur on the hare's body really does pop. And the fact that we've got the neutral background sky behind with just separates it from the background, really makes it stand out. Very striking. Nicely composed, great shot. So that's a 19 as well.
Gary Barton.
Number 47. Subtle and different, but I just like the way that this is composed. Very well seen, very simple, but elegant as well. Good textures, strong whites and blacks. I like the angle of the feather in one direction and the head of the whatever it is, seed head on the other, above it in the other direction. It's just very complimentary. It just appeals to me, that one. That's going to get a 19. Number 49. I have to know about this going into the 20 spot, but it's got such good detail there in all of the fur. There are highlights, but the highlights have been held really well. It's just a really very skilled photograph. Very nice. 19, very close. Hopefully that should leave 3.
Colin Yates. 1, 2, 3. Yes, 3.
Cool. All right. It's all gone well. It's all gone well. Right. So in no particular order, because these are just what I thought were the best on the night. So they're all going to get 20. I'm just going to do them in the order that they appeared in. So there's not a particular winner, because I wasn't asked for a winner in this section. So we'll go for, well, you can put them up in any order. 29. A great shot. Do like this a lot. Could again be an infrared kind of thing based on the fact of the leaves being very white and the sky being very dark. But it works very well for a mono conversion, and it's got a kind of stark quality, but still very powerful and strong. It's one of those shots that really does stand out as a mono shot. Yes, it was in colour. But it's a good choice to make it into a mono shot. Got that Very nice composition. Really like that. That's going to be a 20. Let's put 30.
And McGrath.
33. Right. This one, I just really like the grit and the power that this one has. The darkness of the sky, so powerful, yet the sheep themselves are not dark. When I talked about selective conversion with the monos, this must have been done with this image, because unless you'd got a spotlight on the sheep, that lighting wasn't there on the day, but the conversion has really brought it out. And what really just makes it is this little fella here, or lady or whoever she is, just looking at the camera. Really, really nice shot. I like that so much. So that's going to get a 20. And that should leave 30. That should leave 39, which is just, I know it's a still life and it's been set up, but it's been set up with skill and understanding of light and composition. It's different from everything else that we've seen tonight. It's, again, I've used the word elegant before, but this again is elegant. It's so well done. Sorry, that's a 20.
Reg Haslam.
Try and crack on, because otherwise we've got quite a lot again to do. So I might just try and be a little bit quicker. Okay, so first one, do like the shape that the two flowers at the top make. They're really nice, and the way that they echo each other. That's really well seen and very well composed. Do like that a lot. So this kind of shape here that's echoed in those two flowers, that's really great. Just looking around the frame though, we've got this little guy here at the bottom that's just breaking into the frame, and if we'd lost that there, we wouldn't have had that coming into the bottom. So that's just a shame. Maybe that there just takes your eye away from these two main flowers. So that's just a shame about those two things. So he's going to get a 15.
And McGrath.
Right, we've got two nice insects here. I like the butterfly and I like the bee. We've got good detail here in the head and in the body of this one. Fortunately, obviously the way that it's been caught with the wings open, then we've got this back wing that's starting to really go out of focus and starting to go soft. I'm not totally convinced that having two competing subjects in the frame works. Yes, I can understand that you thought, oh, I've got two, it's going to be double, it's going to be even better. But for me, the two compete and don't actually complement each other. I'd probably like to just see one or the other. If it was the butterfly on its own without the bee, I think the eye would go to just that one rather than flitting between the two. So they're just slightly competing. So that's 16.
John Metcalf.
Yeah. Simple picture, nicely spotted. I had a little look at the whites. They looked like they were just on the edge. I think they haven't blown out. I did look at them carefully. But the head, it's always difficult when you've got white plumage and you've got to try and get them as bright as you can. So that's okay. That's not going to knock that. But then the background itself, because of where they are, it's just ever so slightly busy. And because the time of year that it was taken, the flowers have just gone past the best. I know that's what it was. But again, what we've got to do is we've got to think, is this the most pictorial? Put it against everything else that's in the competition tonight. So it's going to get a 15.
John Kent.
Going to hold this one. Right. I like the idea behind this one. the author has either done some kind of intentional camera movement or some kind of double exposure to get these light streaks, however it's been done. I think it works quite well. It makes it feel a little bit atmospheric. But unfortunately, after saying that, if we just look around the image, we've got the water down here that's a bright spot. So that's obviously the area of focus. But then we've got in the top corners other bright areas that are just pulling us away from the main area of focus. We've got this wire fence up at the top that is quite dominant, and this really bright spot just here that draws your eye. And so the whole composition, I like the effect, but the composition just lets it down. So that one's going to be a 14. Okay. Again, this is similar to a similar one, a previous mono one that we saw. Got out in the snow, which is good, and maybe not the most spectacular woodland you could have chosen, but I think the author needed to look a little bit harder to find something that made for a really strong composition. We've got this main tree trunk right down the middle, which is obviously the subject, but is it strong enough as a really powerful image? You've got these logs in the foreground that don't really lead into because they cut across the frame rather than leading into the frame. And so from a compositional point of view, it's just, what is it a picture of? Obviously, it's a picture of a woodland, and woodland photography is really difficult. Now, take it for pleasure. Choose the best thing to put into a competition. It's the kind of thing that I would take myself and enjoy taking, but think about whether it's a competition shot. So that's a 14. And we've called it high above the heron, and yes, of course we are, but the heron obviously is the subject, and I don't know how big your monitors are at home, but there is a heron just there by the looks of it, very small in the frame, and so without the title, it would be reasonably difficult to even tell what kind of bird it is, and you may even just not even notice it to begin with. And so we've then got to look as well, if that's the subject, what's happening in the rest of the frame, and there's all of this shoreline and the trees above it and the bright spot at the bottom. Because again of the bright spot, your eye is drawn in that direction away from the trees, and so the whole composition just isn't particularly strong, or the subject particularly large. So that's a 14 as well. All right, again, nicely seen. This is a kind of thing that we all take when we see this kind of thing. The backlit leaves, I've done exactly the same thing myself in autumn, and it makes for a very striking image. But again, think about the pictorial quality of what you're taking. We've got every leaf that you saw on the branch. Now, could you isolate one leaf to make it stronger with a darker background? We've got this particular leaf here in the background that's really bright, probably the brightest spot in the image, that's just drawing your eye up towards the top, away from the main subject. And so it is fiendishly difficult to take pictures in woodland, and don't let anybody tell you different, to try and find isolated shapes and compositions that work really well. And just pointing at something doesn't always give you the strongest composition. Yes, the effect of the light coming through the leaves is really lovely, and the colours, that's great. But the composition and the isolation of any particular one leaf just lets this one down. So that's a 15.
Ken McGrath.
Right, we're going to hold. And we're going to hold. Okay, little red robin. I really like the robin and the perch that it's sat on. It's not too thick. You have to watch the thickness of perches compared with the size of birds. As I've said, in the interval, I've got a shed in the back garden where I take pictures of birds, and I literally strap bits of twig to posts next to the feeder so they land on the twigs. But what I have found is the thinner the twigs compared with the birds, it shows the birds off more. If the twigs are too thick, it can start to feel a little bit chunky compared with the bird itself, which I think this perch is just slightly on the edge of doing. And also, the leaf, yes, it does frame the bird nicely, but again, it could be a little bit distracting with the bright spots on the leaf just here that draw your attention away from the bird. And then we've got some twigs there going on in the background. So just a few elements that just take away from the quality of the bird itself. So that's a 16.
Steve Weatherly.
Hold that one, please. Again, I was saying in the interval that I've got loads of pictures of kingfishers. I've got a hide that is fairly close to where I live, and they are lovely birds and great to take photos of. And this is a really nice pose, and you can see this is on a very thin perch, which again really shows off the bird. That just highlights what I was saying about a thin perch. But unfortunately, the quality of the kingfisher is just not quite there. Composition's great. It's just ever so slightly on the soft side for me. It needs to be sharper. Now, this is probably because you're taking it on a very long lens from quite a long distance away. And there's not a lot that you can do about that, even with a fast shutter speed or whatever. So it's just overall very soft throughout the image, which is just a shame. So that's going to get a 15.
Christine Armstrong.
I can see what the authors tried to do with this. They tried to make an image that is almost graphic in its quality, whether it was taken with some kind of artificial light, it kind of gives that impression, or whether it was just some very fortuitous sunlight that was falling in a particular spot with dark bits around it. So that's well seen. But certainly the way I'm looking at it now on my monitor, I can't tell where the edge actually comes. And this is one that would really benefit from a key line, just to distinctly show where the edges of this image are. And I still think there's perhaps a little bit too much dark around the outside. So it's a good try. I can see what you were going for. It's going to be a 15.
Lucy Wilson.
Going to hold that one.
Sure.
This is like I said at the beginning, this is the composition that I judged first, and all the images that I held as I went through them got put into a pile, and this one went into that pile, but then I ended up with about 20, I think, in the pile, which pretty much is too much at the top. So everything moved down one, and this moved down into the 17 place. It's a great quality image. It's interesting perch. I do like a jay. You don't see them too often. They're very shy birds. Background is really diffused. Great pose. Nothing really to fault about it. But again, I had so many in the top, I had to be a bit ruthless, and this one just slipped out of the top marks. 17.
Mike Atkinson.
Right. So here we've got a gate that's closed. Yes, you could say that the texture on the gate is okay, and we've got some strong sunlight, but as probably a record shot, it's okay. But really, compared with what we've got in this competition tonight. Is it going to be memorable? Not greatly. Is it well taken? Yeah, it's sharp and it's well composed, but it just leaves me wanting a little bit more. There's not quite enough there to hold my attention. So that one is 14. Great shot of the starling. Again, starlings are lovely birds. Particularly if you can get them in a bit of sunlight. The iridescence you get off the plumage is just really spectacular. Very, very nicely diffused background. That's great. It's but I've mentioned perches. This one just is too dominant for me. Obviously that's where it was, but if you've got access to feeders, like I said, I've bought some metal poles that I got from B&Q that were about £3 each. I just ran them into the ground and I stick branches to them with Velcro. So they're dead quick to change out, and I put them right next to the feeders so they land on the branch before they hop over to the feeders, and you get a really natural looking shot. And for me, with it being such a bright, angular perch, it just jars. So it's a nicely taken starling, but the perch just isn't right. So that's a 16.
Carol Weatherly.
Okay, Mrs. Black. The actual bird itself is nice. We've got some good detail in the plumage. So I can't really fault that. Just the composition. I think I mentioned on a previous shot about a bird in the top corner looking out of the top corner, and this one is doing the same. If this was just moved over ever so slightly, so it was on the opposite side of the frame looking into the frame instead of in the top corner looking out the frame, I think it just would have been a lot stronger, because we've got a lot of foreground with the bush, with the berries. Did we need quite so much of that? Because the focus is so if I've lost a bit at the bottom and a bit off the side, that might have just composed it better, or just moved over slightly a bit more to the left. I don't know whether you've got more on your original that you could just expand out on the left hand side. I think that would just made it stronger. So Mrs. Black gets 16.
Alison Townley.
He's going to get held. Add another held, please. All right, Little Dale. Okay. This has almost got a painterly quality, whether it's to do with the processing that you've done. I don't know whether the tree has just been brought out more than it actually was, because the dell that it's in, or the little hole, seems quite dark and in shadow, but the tree trunk and the branches do seem quite a bit brighter, but I think that works. It certainly was needed to just separate that from the background, and it gives it that painterly quality. Like I said, the sky's been held very nicely, so that works, but it's going to get a 16 tonight.
Brad Cheek.
Dreamy Dahlia. So when I mentioned in the first half how some flowers look better in colour, well, there's your example. So this is definitely a colourful flower, and it needs to be. So the flower itself is great, but then we've got to think, right, what is just around the outsides and in the background, because backgrounds to these things are just as important. Now, you've got 3 flower buds that are dominant, encroaching onto the main flower itself. You've got way in the background some what I imagine is the sky coming through the trees, or the foliage behind, which is bright and draws your eye away from it. And you say, well, what could I do? That was there on the day. That's what I got. But I don't know where you were, whether you could have a bit of, if you've got like the black mount board, stick that behind to isolate it from all of that other stuff. You wouldn't have to do any destroying of flowers. If this was in your garden, you've got no excuse at all. Stick a bit of black mount board behind, really isolate that from the background, and then you'll have a really strong graphic image without all of that fuss going on in the background, and that would really, really make that stand out. So we want that's going to get 14. Okay, subtle, gentle, well seen. So whether this was naturally wet because of a rainstorm, whether you went out with your spray and sprayed it, doesn't really matter. It makes no difference. But it's well seen, and it's nicely taken. The highlights have been held well, so that's a 16.
Carol Weatherly.
It's going to get held. Okay, the woodpecker, this is so close. This was in the held pile and then just slipped out. It's a great shot of the woodpecker. The whites have been held very nicely. Nice pose that you've got. Perhaps if it was slightly less tight, it's just a bit tight on the bottom, you may have considered holding it. Nothing greatly wrong with your camera technique or the shot that you've got. So that's a lovely picture of a woodpecker, but against what is to come, that's got a 17.
Mike Atkinson.
And waiting for a place. Right, so the robin itself is very well taken. It whether it's been brightened or whether it just was brighter than the rest, it's a good choice, that is, because it makes it stand out. The fact we've got a bit of snow gives it a bit of atmosphere. So all that's good. It's just that the main subject for me is very central and very small in the frame, and that's just a shame. Do we need quite so much of the chair and the seat that's covered in snow? I don't think we do. I think the star of the show is the robin, not the pattern of the seat. So it's just a little bit more than we really need to stop us focusing on the robin. So that's going to be at 15.
Colin Yates.
Okay. Very nice, well seen, nicely composed. This kind of thing, it's a bit macabre, but that's nature, isn't it? That's what happens. So well seen. It's just a shame when you start to look at it in detail that the one bit you want to be really, really, really sharp is the head of the spider, and it's just not, unfortunately, because the key to pretty much any photography for me, especially if you're going to put it into a competition, if you've got an animal or a person, the head and the eye needs to be sharp. And unfortunately, this is just not quite there. It's going to get a 15.
Dan Stott.
And this suffers from a similar kind of thing. Great pose here of the sparrowhawk. I don't really mind that we've got foliage in front of it because it kind of puts it in its environment. But similar to what I had said about the kingfisher earlier, possibly because it's on a long lens or whatever, it's just a little bit too soft, really, for my liking. Nicely composed, so it's going to get an extra mark, but it's going to be 14. Okay, this nuthatch is very nicely composed. I do like the moss that it's on and the very diffused background. It's that's a very pleasing, nice pose you've got there from it. For me, it's just slipped out of the top marks because it's just overly bright. I think I maybe just turn the exposure down ever so slightly. I know then you might lose detail in the chest area, possibly, but that's the problem of taking shots like this in the bright sunlight. You're going to get those very contrasty images, and this is just, for me, just a shade too bright. So it's going to get a 17.
Graham Harvey.
Good idea, nicely spotted. Now, if you look at the background on this one, whether this was just fortuitous that you got it against the sky, or whether you did, as I said, took it inside and you got it against the wall or whatever, but that blank background does really simplify the image and makes it much stronger. So that's good from that point of view. But we just have to look around the frame. When we look at the flower head here, there's your bright bit. The main star, which is the ladybug in this area, is darker, quite a lot darker. And so that just sets up a kind of juxtaposition that doesn't quite work. You've got the bright bit that was not the area of focus against the dark bit that is. And then just watch your edges as well. Down here, you've clipped off the edge of that flower, which I don't know whether, I'm sure you didn't intend to do, because nobody takes a photograph thinking, I think what I really need to do is clip the edge of this flower off to make it stronger. But just be aware of all of those things when you're taking a shot, because I think that would have been better with just the whole of that flower just in as well. So what we got here, we got a 15.
Anissa Sadat.
Right. I think Carol was saying she saw my video that I put out a few weeks ago of taking pictures almost similar to this, of light coming through the tree. I love that starburst effect, so very strong. But just got to be careful when you do this kind of thing, taking into the sun, that you end up with silhouettes. I don't mind shots taken into the sun. We had a judge a few weeks ago at our club that was moaning about every time there was a shot taken into the sun, it was, oh, you've got a bright spot there that's drawing your eye. It doesn't worry me at all. But the dark spots that are caused by it are just a little bit too dark on here. You could have selectively, again, lifted some of these dark spots just to bring out a little bit of detail. I know you probably were going for that silhouette and really strong shadow, but the overall image, apart from the sun itself, feels quite dark. And so I think I just prefer a little bit more balance in this one. So that's a 15 as well.
Katie Alwabi.
Right. This was one that nearly got into this was in the top section held, but then came out again because there was so many in the top. Mentioned before about the subject of a heron being too small, but in this one it's perfect. It's just the right size, and it's complemented really well with those colours behind it. They all work really well, and the reflections in the water hang together. We don't really have any bits there that we don't need. I think, yeah, you could possibly crop it tighter, but that's personal choice. I don't dislike what we've got because I like the colours and the overall expanse. The heron's put in a good position. So it's a 17, just slipped out because there's stronger ones to come.
Mandy Foreman.
Okay. Powerful because of the colours and the strength. And yeah, I've mentioned in other images that there's a lot going on. There's no area of focus. With this, you kind of get patches of crocus, not a problem at all, because that's how they come. It doesn't worry me as much on this image. But what does just draw my attention, if you look around each flower and try and spot which one is in sharp focus, I can't actually see any that are. When you look at the stamen, I just can't see any that are really pin sharp. So it's not out of focus by any means, but there's just nothing really, really razor sharp that draws my attention to one particular area. And so just slightly lets it down. It's not far off, but it's not quite there. So that's a 15. Jump, 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 jump.
Jay Prakash Patil.
Yeah, I've already said I quite like a squirrel. Not a bad picture of a squirrel. I like the quality of the light you've got. It's obviously a good time of day. It's not too strong. It looks fairly low, so you're getting a warm light on the animal, which is complementary to it, which is always a good thing. But the animal itself, I've sort of mentioned this before, is very central in the frame. And once you've looked at the animal, then you start looking at everything else that you've got. So you've got a great pile of leaves behind it and a big intrusive tree stump here and some foliage here. When really the star of the show is a squirrel. One thing that a judge once said that I heard that has stuck with me is, if I was a painter and I was choosing to paint a squirrel, would I put the squirrel right in the middle and include lots of things like this dominant tree branch and other things like this? What would I choose to put in the frame? And if you wouldn't actually choose to put it there, if it doesn't add anything, then it shouldn't be there. And so that's a good way of thinking about, what do I need to crop? Another way of thinking about it is cropping much tighter than you really think you should do. So maybe crop into that kind of area and then slowly bring the crop out until you've got what you need, and that's your picture. Even though there was other things there on the day, is it really adding to the picture, or is it just making it a little bit more confusing? So the squirrel itself's good, but there's too much going on around the outside of it for me. And so that's going to be a 15 as well.
And start.
Right. Pleasant shot. Simple. Do like the head of the foxglove, just a little bit overdone on the vignette around the edge, and maybe a shade too much of the stem. We could have gone a little bit tighter on the flower head and not had quite so much stem, but it's a very pleasant shot, nicely composed. 16.
Colin Yates.
Okay, it's nice colours, well seen. Whether the colours have just been pushed with saturation or vibrance, don't know. It doesn't really bother me because it's quite striking. But once you get past those pleasant colours, again, it's just one of those that, what have I got to land my eye on? There's not a strong area of focus. It's just a lot of leaves at the end of the day. So that's a 14. Do like this image a lot, and it was in my held pile for a while because it's subtle, and I like the muted pastels of the sunset, sunrise, whichever one it is. Don't think it says in the and so that's nice. And the silhouette that's been caused by these grasses is just very subtle and soft and pleasing. So I really like it. I just had to lose some out of that top group, so it's going to get a 17, but I do like it.
ATR Webby.
And I had another one that's just slipped out of that top spot. It's very nice. I mentioned before about an insect that you couldn't quite see the form of, and this doesn't apply to this one. You can really see the form of this much better. I like the flower head. It almost kind of gives a zoom burst effect. The way that the depth of field falls off really works well. But I had to look for a few things that just knocked it out of the top spot, and the background just drew my attention too much. When you consider these two white bits just in the background, just break up the background ever so slightly. It's a little tiny thing, but it just pulled it out into the 17 spot.
John Metcalf.
Where are we? Oh, we're going to hold that one. We're going to hold that one. We're going to hold that one. Okay, so nice little pose you've got here from the blue tit. That's all good. He's a little bit scruffy, but we're not going to hold that against him. He's seen better days, but unfortunately, the quality doesn't quite hold up against some of the other things that we've seen tonight. It's just either slightly over sharpened or not quite in focus enough where it should be. The background is quite dominant with whatever it is, piece of some kind of wood or some fence or shed or whatever it is in the background. And the highlights are on the very edge of going out. So overall, the quality doesn't quite feel as good as some of the other things we've seen tonight. So that's going to get on 13, unfortunately. Right, this blue tit, I like the pose. I like the attitude of it. The background is great. That's really nice and out of focus. But now I have mentioned this, but this is one to really mention again. If you think of that perch that it's on, yes, it's an interesting bit of wood. Can't deny that. But if you think of it in comparison to the size of the bird, it becomes a shot about a piece of wood that has a bird on it rather than a bird that's on a piece of wood. And for me, that's the wrong way around. It needs to be a bird on a perch rather than a perch with a bird on it. And so for that reason, it's going to get a 14. Oh, this one. I really like the bird itself. The bird has got so much detail. It's a really interesting specimen. Now, it might have been that on the day you saw it through these branches and you didn't see any better shots of it. And if that's the case, then you've done really well to get such a great shot if it was taken like that. But as a competition shot, we've got to take these branches and things into account. And we've got this very, very dominant branch here in the foreground that's covering a huge part of the bird. Then we've got this other branch that looks about to poke it in its other eye. And it's just the whole mess of branches around it just stop it being a really strong competition shot. As a record of this bird, if it was the only shot you got of the day, then great. I'm sure you're very proud of seeing this bird, but with all the stuff going on around it, it just it takes it down. So it's going to be a 15.
Lucy Wilson.
Great composition here, well seen to get these 3 in a row. 3s always work well. You've probably heard lots of judges say that before, but for some reason they do. 3s just are very visually pleasing. You've not got any other colour or distractions in the background. Yes, there's some leaf patterns, but because the colours of the flowers are so dominant, the leaves just fade out and don't really become a problem. I just think there could have been a little bit more quality. These, unless there was very windy on the day, I think they could have just worked to get that a little bit sharper, maybe lift the camera up to get a little bit more on the plane of the flowers, so that you haven't got as much front to back difference, so they're all on one plane, and just really work on getting them as sharp as possible, and that would have been an absolutely cracking shot. But that is going to get a 15 as well.
Dan Johnson.
It's going to get held. Okay, I like the way that you've used the bridge as a kind of frame above the image. That works well. With so many ducks on the water, it just becomes quite busy. And yeah, it's interesting from that point of view, but these kind of things always do tend to work very well if they're simplified and you just focus on one. If there was a single duck under that bridge, yeah, I think we would be onto something a bit better. And in the background, we've got some strong highlights going on there, and those that foliage there in the background. So not quite working as well, that one. That's going to get a 14. Do like him a lot. It's very soft and subtle. Really nice, nicely taken shot of that robin. Yeah, it's not on a natural perch, but sometimes you don't have to have a natural perch. You've got this terracotta plant pot that doesn't feel too out of balance with the robin. It feels like that's where it would be. The background isn't too distracting, so that's a 16.
Alison Townley.
A female deer. Right. So again, I said almost the same thing earlier on about a similar shot of I think a stag or something. Great shot of the animal itself. Nicely in focus, good pose, looking towards, well, in the direction of the photographer, even if not straight at the photographer. It's just a little bit of a shame, you probably know where I'm going, about that tree there that's growing out of its head almost. It just stops it separating from the background as successfully as if that wasn't there. If that was just plain green, I don't know how handy you are with a clone tool, but maybe get rid of it. But it's a 16.
Christine Armstrong.
And we're going to hold it.
That's 13 held.
Okay. Okay. Right, so we'll start with number 4, being as you're there. That's fine. This one's going to get an 18. I like the detail here of no problem here, as I've mentioned earlier about seeing the form of this creature. Great. Good detail there in the eyes and the body. I had to be critical, and it was obviously because of the angle it's taken at. Just the tips of the wings are just going out of focus slightly. Not a lot you could do about that, but looking at what we've got against that, just held it off the very, very top spots. But it's a lovely shot. It's going to be an 18. We'll go for number 9, the orangutan. So much detail and sharpness here, and the hair and the eyes. Very, very. You anthropomorphize these kind of animals, and you imagine them having the same emotions we've got. But this one, he does seem to have some kind of wistful look on his eye, or in his eyes, or something. It's very evocative. The kind of things that slight head tilt that it's got really does speak to us as humans. We want to see emotions that perhaps are not always quite there, but a lovely shot. That's going to get an 18.
Dan Johnson.
We're going to go for number 12. What? like the subtle colours here. That great, completely unobtrusive background. It seems like it's some kind of warm, low sun kind of light that's falling onto this bird that's stopping it from burning out. It really held it very well. Very strong, lovely detail. That's an 18.
Gary Barton.
Number 15. Possibly the same author that did the triptych, because they almost look the same flowers. May not be, but similar thing is that it's obviously somebody with some skill of composition, that they've arranged the two flowers in the front very nicely, but then superimpose the same flowers into the background as a kind of pseudo frame, just to and that is a good idea. It really works well to echo the flowers in the front. So clever idea. That's 18.
Reg Haslam.
Number 21. Great little nuthatch. Look at that background, how diffuse that is. Super, great lighting falling on the bird. Perch, maybe a little shade thick, but we'll let them off of that because it's an absolutely cracking shot of a nuthatch. Great detail. He's an 18.
Kirsty Railton.
Go for number 41. Lovely shot. Great detail there in the head. Because there's so much detail there in the head and the detail of the plant, doesn't matter, we can't see the rest of the body because you know where we're looking and you can tell what it is. Do I really like the yellow key line that's being so thick? Maybe yellow, but a bit thinner. Maybe. I'm not totally convinced on that. But other than that, the shot itself is great. So that's an 18.
8K.
Right. We're going to 20. Right, so we're going into the 19s now. So great shot here of this bear. Again, on my monitor now, I think it's probably Zoom that's just pushing the highlights on the bear's back. I didn't notice that when I looked at it on my monitor earlier on, so I'm going to blame that on Zoom. But it's a super shot there of this, loads of detail in the fur and the attitude of the bear. So that's a 19.
Jan Kent.
Number 25. Let's. Lovely lighting here on this mushroom. Who says mushrooms can't do well? Do like the way that you've got down right to the level of the mushroom, whether the leaves were placed or whether that's just how you saw them, who knows, but who cares? They add a bit of colour and just balance up the mushroom itself. Like that a lot, almost artistic in its quality. It feels like, I think the way the lighting's falling on it makes it feel almost like a studio shot. So that's a 19. We'll go. Sorry. Did people hear the name there? I think I might have talked over you.
Mandy Foreman.
Thank you. Number 42, please. Okay, smashing shot, absolutely cracking. The body and the quality of the focus here on the insect itself is great. Really, the only thing when I put it against the others that got the 20 in this one, there was just a few highlights just around the edges, just that could have just been toned down ever so slightly, just to draw attention towards the main subject itself. But this the bit in the middle around is just absolutely amazing. Great shot. Just tone these down just ever so slightly, and it just made that even stronger. At 19. And number 51. Oh, this was so nearly a 20. I so wanted to give this a 20 because I absolutely love how subtle and soft and evocative this is. Don't know how it was done. I'd love to know. It was just, I love the quality of the light and just the mood that's created. The only thing that when I put it against the others that I put in the top 3, that just this area here, just of highlight, just pulled my eye away. Without that bit there, that definitely would have been a 20. It pained me to not give it 20, but I couldn't, in all honesty, against the others, with that bright highlight that was pulling my eye away from this lovely quality in the middle. Just give that a 20, but I wanted to, so it's a 19.
Right, Haslam.
Okay, we're going, that should leave us 3 left. So we go for number 10. Nothing to fault. I really love the image. It's soft in the background, and I did have a good study at this to see if it had been artificially, and I couldn't see any signs that the background had been artificially blown out. So I'm going to say that this was done just with depth of field and good camera technique. I like the few wisps of grass that just pop up in the foreground to just anchor it to the floor. That's great. That's been well done. You're looking straight into the eyes of the bird. The bird's in a good pose. It's just really magical. So that's 20.
Gary Barton.
Then we've got number 40. Bit of fun, but well taken. You've obviously thought a bit about setting this up to get this squirrel to come and investigate the camera. So some thought gone in it, and probably quite a lot of patience as well for this to happen. Probably got some peanut butter spread on top of it or something, who knows, but it makes for a quirky but memorable shot, and that's what I said at the beginning, what judges are looking for. We've not seen anything like this in tonight's competition, and so it stands out. So that's a 20. That should leave us number 47. Sorry, number 47. For another 20, just absolutely, I know from taking Kingfishers, I've never got anything like this. And tricky to get, nicely taken.
Ruth Lockery, go for our overall winner.
Oh, it's from the colour section, and the one that was my overall was the short-eared owl hunting.